Hello, friends. It's Chapo.
See, it's an objective fact. Alex Shirazi started donating to Hillary Clinton in 2005 with a cool $5,000. I mean, that was Clinton 05. That was before she even ran for president. Of course, he is on her team when she runs for president in 08. And he is one of two political appointees to the State Department of Near Eastern Affairs. The nearest Department of Near Eastern Affairs deals with Iran, Israel, Iraq, Syria. It's the Middle East, right? And he is one of two political appointees. The other political appointee is a guy named George Mitchell.
Ooh.
Now, George Mitchell, I think he was a senator, I think Senate Majority Leader at one point, and a judge.
Disney,
also on the
Disney board chair.
Yes, vice chair of the 9/11 Commission under Bush. Virginia Giuffre, one of the most famous Epstein accusers, said that George Mitchell.
He's on the flight logs.
Yeah,
he's on the flight logs, and he's denied, of course, meeting Virginia Giuffre ever. Who knows what he was doing with Epstein then? But so it's these two political appointees by Hillary Clinton to the State Department of Near Eastern Affairs. Only two: Alex Shirazi, George Mitchell. Alex Shirazi joins and is the American delegate, or one of the American delegates, to these two groups: the Friends of Libya group and the Friends of Syria group.
Well, that could be apolitical.
Yeah.
With friends like these, huh, Donnie?
The Friends of Libya were basically all the Western countries that met, I think it was in Ankara in Turkey, or maybe it was in Istanbul, and decided to back the Libyan opposition. So it was through those meetings that weapons and air support, etc., were promised to the people that overthrew Gaddafi and are now doing a bang-up job of running Libya, one of the most potentially wealthy countries in the region. Friends of Syria was the same thing except for Syria, but like everything in Syria, it did not go according to plan. And now there was at one point 100 countries in it. Now there's 7 countries in it, in not even America anymore. But Robert fucking Maxwell's grandson was one of the people that helped overthrow Gaddafi and was trying to overthrow Bashar al-Assad in Syria. It's fucking insane.
I mean, I definitely, like I said, I do want to get to the Epstein stuff with you, because there's a lot to still talk about there, obviously. But just two more quick things on the Kurds and Syria. Is that I wanted to talk to you because I'm wondering, what is it like there, right now in the parts of that country that you were in, and the former comrades, friends, men at arms, men and women at arms, I should say, who, you fought with. What is it like for them there now? You're mentioning that this is not going as smoothly as Turkey or these militias would have liked. I mean, just based on my assessment of just watching the news, I had assumed that this was all bad for the Kurdish forces in Syria. But you're saying that that's maybe not so much the case.
Well, there have been hundreds of deaths, right?
So, it's bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad, but it's not this quick. When the Turks invaded Afrin, that was pretty bad. They took it fairly quickly, but now they're really getting bogged down. Partially because of just the huge concentration of forces here, but also because they do fucking suck at fighting. They haven't been able to beat the PKK in 40 years. But there is this, now they are just straight up attacking Syrian army soldiers, which is potentially pretty bad, right? Because the Syrian army is, of course, allied with Russia. And so for my friends that are over there, first of all, my old unit, the International Freedom Battalion, has reconstituted itself. That's a unit made up of all these Turkish Marxist-Leninist parties, and I think a Turkish anarchist party, plus YPG members and international fighters. They are fighting, and there's all these videos released of basically guys in hoodies with AKs holding back the Syrian National Army because they're kind of too afraid to advance. So there's been a lot of fighting. Unfortunately, the Syrian troops there haven't really been supplied with armor or armored vehicles or heavy weapons or anything. So it's a bit of an uneven one. But it's really, I think, kind of up to Russia and Turkey at this point of what's going to happen. Because the YPG agreed to vacate this sort of strip of land surrounding where the Turks are invading and have the Syrian army go into there. which many people thought would lead to sort of like a longer term ceasefire or some sort of political agreement. But it looks like the Syrian National Army, the FSA, and the Turks are not stopping. So the ceasefire doesn't exist, and there's been I think 300,000 people displaced who are now internal refugees. And of course, ISIS fighters broke out of prison, and yeah, it's not great there. There are a lot of reprisals against civilians in the area where the Turks and the FSA have invaded. But it's also good because apparently there's a lot of local groups like village councils, etc., who have taken up arms and are fighting alongside the Syrian army and the YPG against the Turks. So it's I think it will turn into something like a people's war, like a sort of flatland guerrilla fighting on the front, as opposed to these sort of giant pitched battles. But yeah, it's one of those things that this could go any direction within the next day or so. So I'm really interested in to see what the fuck is going to happen.
And
but a lot of my friends have gone back. And I one guy I know died pretty early in the fighting. And everyone else I'm kind of waiting to hear from them. They're not dead, but I don't know where they are.
And I mean, do you regard is there any role in your opinion that the United States could play in terms of support, as if not troops, if we all agree no American soldiers should be anywhere in Syria? Is there any support or assistance that the United States could render on this side of the fight that would be positive, or is it all just like a poison chalice that's not worth sipping out of?
I mean, I don't think that anybody in that region, they should. I don't think they should have trusted the Americans in the first place. They definitely shouldn't trust them now. The best thing that America can do is to stop interference in the YPG coming to these UN peace talks, which is really one of the most important things that hasn't been reported on enough. The fact that the YPG cannot even participate in the peace talks, and that they should. I mean, I'm fine with them sanctioning Turkey. I don't give a fuck. They should do that. They're not going to in any real way because there's a lot of investments here and there. But yeah, they should reopen diplomatic relations with the Syrian government and sort of maybe coordinate with Russia to make sure this offensive is curtailed and pulled back.
Okay,
but yeah. All the troops should fucking, I don't know, come back here and they can get really depressed and addicted to fentanyl.
Yeah, there are Dodge Challengers that are not being bought.
Exactly.
There are all lives matter rap songs on Facebook not being posted. There's just a lot, a new COD's out and they're nowhere to be seen. We need them.
Yeah.
We need them here.
Women need a husband that they'll cheat on. Women need to marry these soldiers they can have with cool guys instead of the soldiers.
Yeah, there are variable interest rate mortgages that guys aren't taking out. Bring our boys back.
Exactly.
All right, this is my last question on related to this topic before we switch into so we say domestic concerns. This is sort of a little bit of a digression, but I got to bring it up. What do you make of Ilhan Omar's vote of present on the official recognition of the Armenian genocide? Because that's a yikes from me.
Yeah, no, that is not a good look, as they say. So obviously, Armenians in this country, and there have been Armenians in this country for a long time, have been pushing for official recognition of the Armenian genocide for a long fucking time. I think Obama promised it.
He did.
I don't know if...
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, did not follow through.
That doesn't sound like him.
Yeah, totally. I know, uncharacteristically did not follow through. The Armenian genocide, which is, of course, very much not recognized by Turkey. In fact, they employed pogo stick dancers in a Skyrider in New York once to tell
That was
them.
one of our very first episodes of Chapo. Actually, we ended up, I think it was our 7th episode. We interviewed a guy who did video work for some friends of ours who did he was a cameraman who had done video work with some friends of mine who did some early video stuff for us. And they just told us there's this guy who does camera work for us who was hired and filmed the Erdogan Genolai dance mob on Roosevelt Island or something. And the skywriting and all that shit and the pogo stick dance troupe. He filmed all that and he was saying that it was just a job people got hired for off Craigslist. And they only sort of found out after the fact that this was like a genocide denial.
That's not true. One of Osman's dreams in his tent was he envisioned Showtime approximately 600 years before it had ever been done. So that's actually like an ancient tradition. So yeah, there you go.
So the flash mob didn't work, and everyone pretty much agrees that the Armenian genocide happened. Ilhan Omar says that she couldn't recognize it or couldn't vote present because the genocide sort of recognition was being used as a political cudgel, which it is being used as a political cudgel, but no one cares. Like, it actually happened. They should just recognize it.
Well, she also had an odd statement about how like these things should be decided by like academic standards rather than political concerns. And it's like, well, if that's the case, like there is no debate about this whatsoever.
Like, it's unanimously recognized. Like, when I was in Syria, at the sort of training school that they had, the ideological and military training school they sent us to, like, one of the first lessons was they taught us about the Kurds' role in the Armenian genocide and how they're sorry for it, etc. And so, like, yeah, people who did it are like, yeah, it happened. And so, yeah, she needs to give me a call and we can work this out mano y mano. I think, yeah, it was a bad move by her.
I think she was trying to make some sort of point because she also voted against the sanctions. And it's part of like a broader argument about, like removing coercion is like the centerpiece of diplomacy, which I think is a worthy goal. But yeah, it's one of those things where in an individual vote like this, it ends up being too clever by half because you're only one person and then you're scrutinized for this vote and people are mad at it. And the people who should be on your side are mad at you. And they're not necessarily going to accept that because, you're trying to make sort of a relatively abstruse point with your votes on something that is a very emotionally powerful issue for a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean,
and if she,
no, go ahead.
Oh, if she had just said like, oh, I don't want like this to be used as a political cudgel. Okay. I get that. But her whole thing about how like the Native American Holocaust and the slave trade, like we should recognize that. It didn't really make sense.
Well, it's like good. We should recognize that, but like I guess the point is like if you have a bill in front of you that's like vote yes on just recognizing like active historical genocide, just vote yes.
Yeah.
So again,
absolutely. It's not like it just came out of the blue. Like Armenians have been pushing for this for a long fucking time.
So yeah, just consider this like some light constructive criticism of the Congresswoman. Just got to be fair here. I still admire her greatly, but that one
we can make it up over dinner.
Yeah, that one raised my eyebrow. Okay, all right. Let's shift the discussion now. Like I said, to matters of on the home front here. Obviously, we got to talk Epstein because things. It's fascinating because like as soon as he died, like that story just fucking disappeared.
Yeah, almost like that was the idea.
It's odd how that happened.
It's like, hey, this guy, this could be like a year-long criminal case with a bunch of discovery. What if he just died?
I mean, obviously, among gentlemen such as ourselves, obviously there's still so much going on here. But as far as like the official press recognition or following this story, they're like, oh. Well, the NFL drafts, the NFL season's coming soon. Like,
why are you bringing up old shit?
Yeah. But this has changed just this week. And I'm wondering if you could what is your take on the appearance of this guy, Michael Baden, who is a, forensic pathologist who is a sort of gadfly in the, autopsy community.
in the body cutting up.
Yeah.
So
he's like the John Gotti of autopsy
absolutely.
Because it's like he's the one that everyone can name, but actual coroners. Like, that guy's just a flash.
He's a flashy. He's a me first flashy.
He's a hip hop style.
He's a hip hop style coroner, not a lunch pail 9 to 5 coroner.
Yeah,
but he had that show.
He is a hip hop style.
Didn't he have that show on HBO, Secrets of the Dead or something? Or like it was like a bunch of
I think it was called Autopsy.
Every guy I knew who had exactly like if I was doing stats with them, they had exact medium intelligence. They were like, that's the most interesting show on TV.
So you got this guy Michael Baden, who I said is sort of a bit of a press hound for this kind of shit, and he is
the Dr. Joyce Brothers of autopsies,
and he is now giving interviews. He has been hired by Epstein's brother or his estate to do like a private examination of this, and he is now giving interviews to Fox News and other outlets saying, based on his study of the evidence here, he would say that this points to homicide rather than suicide. I mean, no shit. This is what everyone is. We've been screaming for months now.
Yeah.
But like, what do you make? So Brace, what do you make of him introducing this again into the public consciousness?
So it kind of throws a wrench in things because obviously, Epstein was murdered, right?
Yes.
But Michael Baden also is a fucking scumbag who is hired by Epstein's team. So like, it makes you wonder, like, oh, was he not murdered? Is this okay? But I think he was murdered, and I think that like it's one of those things where Baden is correct, but he's doing it not to get to the truth of the matter, but he's doing it to sort of obfuscate things in the courtroom. Because obviously, there are these big lawsuits against Epstein's estate, and the money kind of can't move to his brother, Mark Epstein, like it's supposed to without these being dealt with first. So I think this could just add a wrench in those proceedings. But Michael Baden is basing his opinion on the fact that a bone was broken in Epstein's neck, the hyoid bone, which is not like, that's not a bone that breaks when you do what Epstein did.
Which, by the way, what I've read, they said like it does happen sometimes in suicides, especially in older men. Like it's not completely like, you know, jet fuel, steel beams.
Right, yeah.
Parody, not true.
I think the most
however,
famous case,
like it is something that is almost always consistent with a homicide.
Yeah, it's like it's like a circle graph. Like not every time that bone is broken doesn't mean it was a murder. But every time there's a murder, that bone is broken, right?
Yeah,
like,
pretty much.
And if both cameras outside of the cell are
you add that.
and all of the guards are asleep simultaneously.
That's the thing that I think that like we could clear all of this up very quickly if we were just allowed to watch the hours before Epstein's death and to see if anybody came in there and said anything to him or did something to him.
We can't do that.
That is
the
not going to happen.
The camera's broke. What do you want? It happens.
Unlucky. Bad RNG. It's a bad RNG, dude. It's a battle royale.
True.
The ping at the Manhattan Correctional Center was out of this world.
Yeah. Fucking wireless Logitech products. Always fucking shitting on me, dude. I'm done with it.
It's like everyone was they weren't supposed to be there in the first place, and then the cameras were broken, and then he hanged himself in what is like in a ward of a jail that hasn't seen a suicide for 30 years, and the last guy who killed himself was in the mob. So it's a little suspicious. And it's Michael Baden, of course, himself is I think he was famously fired as it was like something like the it was like some high up position in New York State, like a medical position, because he was giving people advice on how to get away with murder.
The one thing we didn't want him to do.
Yeah. And of course he doing a autopsy on JFK for the House Select Committee on Assassinations, which another one of those things that make you go,
Again, you have very odd, but like as an addendum to this, like you have a questionable person, you know, clearly for what is easily discernible as odd to, you know, suspect reasons, is reintroducing what is a factual, and what honestly everyone should be talking about, the fact that he was clearly murdered in custody.
Yeah.
But like this has also inspired a new round of media takes. I'm thinking specifically of a piece I saw in Jezebel that essentially implied that like the headline was like, "Oh no, time for another nightmarish debate about whether Epstein killed himself or was murdered." And they say, like, the new line seems to be that, like, let's just stop talking about this. This debate is sort of ghoulish and cruel, and most importantly, doesn't center the victims. Like, his victims are being denied sort of agency or so like some like that having this debate is somehow cruel or gauche when like his actual victims are seeking some kind of justice through, like you said, these lawsuits against his estate, which seems doubly odd to me, because if you take that line seriously, like if he was murdered, that's a very important question, because the people who fucking killed him are almost certainly the people who have victimized, abused, and probably killed other people related to this case as well. So isn't that important to kind of figure out like what's going on here? If you're concerned about bringing justice to these people?
Everybody who has said like, "Oh, don't pay attention to how he was killed, pay attention to what he did when he was alive," is they're in my black book, if you know what I mean. It's obvious that all of this is so connected. Like how he was killed, who killed him, has a very big impact on getting justice for the victims, because it will allow us to finally lock up William Jefferson Clinton. If Jeffrey Epstein was fucking strangled to death in the Manhattan Correctional Center, I believe that is pretty fucking prescient to what happens to his victims, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like to think that he was killed and it had nothing to do with like other people who were involved. Like, do they think that like, yeah, someone bribed the guards and got into the correctional facility. They did all this shit to kill him, but because he was bad. Like, is that what they think? You would literally have to think that to be like, this has nothing to do with the victims.
Yeah, no, this is like Assassin's Creed or something. Like he was given this mission by a guy on the street, and he came in and just walked by Epstein and stuck him or something. It's totally ridiculous.
It was Karl Marx. He was like, to protect free elections, you have to kill this bad man, Jeffrey Epstein. There should literally be no other news story except for Jeffrey Epstein.
This is like when we had you on, like, you know, again, back when he was still alive to talk about this. Yeah. We compared it to the Mueller report. And now we have this Ukraine impeachment shit, which is, like, in my opinion, way more substantive than anything that the Mueller report produced. But at the same time, I still don't give a shit, because this is the only thing I fucking care about. Like, how can you just have this out there in your consciousnmy and be obsessing over all this other shit?
No, Felix, speak.
Yeah, it's like the people who are like, my favorite posts after Epstein were like the Pod Save Network people, the crooked media people who were like, just like, well, you know, what are you going to do? Anyway, we have our 70th emergency podcast this month about how Glenn Simpson actually heroically pointed out to the whistleblower that his email was being read by Mark Duragitz and Teddy Ziggurat was seen with Clayton Grimshaw. And it's like, this is the thing you're obsessive about? This fucking thing?
Like,
this bullshit?
We literally have fucking Prince Andrew is like, can be arrested for a child. And we're fucking talking about Ukraine. Like, we can finally take out Cromwell's dream. Finally destroy the British royal family. But it's like somehow this is just like it's a conspiracy theory because it's complicated and because it's not on fucking Mad Out. Like somehow the Mueller report shit isn't a these FISA warrants or whatever aren't a conspiracy theory. But the fact that someone was killed in like actually turns out to be a pretty low security jail is just totally like out of bounds. And there is. You know, there's going to be a whole wash of articles now. In fact, I've seen a few already. Like, well, Michael Baden can't be trusted. Yeah, Michael Baden can't be trusted, but he's right. Like, it's murder. I mean, I can't trust journalists either. They fucking helped do the Iraq War. But, like, it's totally insane. And the thing is, some of our faves will be implicated. I want that to happen.
Right. And, like
there's...
No, yeah, like, okay, if Michael Baden can't be trusted, like, okay, so the Manhattan Correctional Facility people can. Like, no one in this can be trusted, but, like, yeah, it's like the thing I've seen these, like, the mass media go after the past 2 days is if the Trump guy was too mean to the colonel who was on TV. Like, are you fucking kidding me? This?
But just as to the issue of the MCC and this suicide, I'd like to suggest not so much like a counterfactual, but just like, maybe I mentioned this before, but like a parallel storyline that I think makes a very compelling contrast to the idea that he committed suicide in like the most secure protection you can be in as the highest profile prisoner in American custody. Prior to all of this, like maybe even just like a month before, El Chapo Guzman was held in Brooklyn, in a similar facility in Brooklyn, and taken to a courthouse in Brooklyn where he was convicted and is now sent to like supermax prison.
Mm-hmm.
And they carried out that trial where like every single time he walked into daylight, he was wearing like a bulletproof suit and probably covered by like 20 snipers, because he was, up until Epstein, the most high profile person. And like so Chapo is a guy, not only he's escaped from jail twice, right?
Yeah,
He's responsible for the deaths of like countless prosecutors, police, and law enforcement people in Mexico. So there's like always obviously we're very careful about like the idea that he could be broken out or there could be some sort of attack on the trial itself. But further than that, if you're a guy facing life in supermax prison, you pretty much have like every reason to pretty much kill yourself, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And if he had killed himself in custody, that would have been such a defeat for like the entire weight of like the U.S. prosecutorial apparatus that it would be like unthinkable
Like
that they could allow that to happen
before they could hang him.
Exactly. Like if they want you to breathe every second of your life in a fucking box because that's like your punishment and that's the power that they have as the state, you're telling me that like they can't absolutely make sure that you live to experience every second of your punishment. This was happening basically parallel to the Epstein thing. And then and he's just like, oh, he just killed himself in jail. Oops.
Oh, well.
I was talking about this with Catherine last night, the El Chapo connection, and just this contrast here being so vivid. And I just like to say, just for the listeners, you can do this too if you have an acute ep-pilled GF.
Yeah. It's the thing is about Epstein's suicide too, is I have been in jail, and I actually have like had a close friend of mine was in solitary in jail where things are a little bit different. You know, you have even thinner sheets, etc. It's killing yourself with one of these fucking sheets is so hard. Like these things are basically paper. You can rip them. And like the fact that they're saying Epstein hung his like he like hung himself from the top bunk and like leaned forward and snapped
with force. With force. He leaned forward with force.
Yeah, it's just totally so out of the bounds of reality that like that should be the fucking conspiracy theory. The fact that they're saying that somebody can kill themselves with a sheet that's like thinner, it's like a millimeter fucking thick.
I mean,
it's not like you get 50 of these sheets.